a match where everything is on the line, Lou. We can take a look at the teams from both of these players just to familiarize ourselves with them. You can see Wolfe is running the Dragapult, the Colossal, the G-Max Rillaboom, the G-Max Urshifu, Incineroar and Galarian Moltres, whereas Markus on the other side has got that Regirock, Lou, the Landorus Therian, Tapu Fini, Rotom Heat, Kartana and the Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, some really interesting teams. And as you mentioned, Lee, this is in the losers bracket, so everything here is at stake. You know, we were able to commentate Wolfe's game in the winners bracket yesterday. We saw him, you know, be successful in that match, but then later on in the tournament when Adam and Rosemary were commentating, unfortunately, he did get knocked down into the losers bracket. And, you know, this is a formidable team he's going up against as well. We've seen the power of that Regirock. We know that the Rotom, if it gets a nasty plot boost up as well, can be devastating in the damage it can deal out. And Grimmsnarl as well. We've talked about it a lot. It can really get up to some disruption, mischief, getting those screens set up as well to keep the defenses high on Marcus's side of the field. But then at the same time, you know, you've just rattled them off there, Lee. We've got 3 Gigantamax Pokemon options there for Wolfe, and he plays his team so masterfully and can really not only look at the ball position of a team, but can really kind of get inside a player's head as well and predict so accurately what they are going to do and adjust to it. So, you know, talking about his skill, let's take a look at his accomplishments as well. You know, such a well-decorated player, Wolfe. He is someone who has been able to achieve all of the trophies possible, a world championship title, an international title, national and regional title as well. So many accolades there. Whereas Markus, you know, he's really making a name for himself over in Germany in this 2020 season, being able to take titles at sort of Premier Challenges and mid-season showdowns, and is now breaking out into these kind of regional and above level tournaments.
Yeah, and you know, what Wolfe has achieved throughout his career is just phenomenal, but Markus doing all the right things here. He's got that really nice finish, the top 16 at the Players Cup 1, you know, like that means he's got the experience already taken into this tournament, and we've already seen him play as well, and he's an extremely good player, and I'm very excited. This is why I can't really contain my excitement for this league, because I think these two players really excite me, and I really am looking forward to this matchup in particular, because if you look at Marcus's team, he does have that Regirock, and if you're going up against Colossal, you think that's probably a really good Pokemon to bring against that, you know, that high defenses are going to make it able to take a flurry of attacks, even things from Rillaboom, especially for Dynamax. You're going to be able to soak up those grass attacks, you know, that, you know, super effective. You're going to take them a lot better just because of that high defense stat that it's got. And also, as you mentioned, it's got the Grimmsnarl support, which is going to make it a little bit more tricky to take down. So we did see Markus pilot that in game 1 yesterday, and we saw how devastating it can be and really hard to contain for the opponent. So it'd be nice to see if he does utilize that here, and especially against the Colossal Dragapult lead that feels a little bit difficult to stop outright for him. He does have the Tapu Fini that he can rely on, and you know, we've seen how awkward that can be for Wolfe to maybe play around, but like you say, massively played around it in previous games where he's come up against that threat. It's a really kind of close match to call, just on paper. I think there's answers to most of the Pokemon back and forth, but it's the selection of 4, and this is where the skill and, you know, everything really comes down to the wire to decide who wins it.
Yeah, exactly. That core of the Colossal and the Dragapult is certainly going to be something Markus has to consider. But I can tell, Lee, you are very, very excited about this one. So let's not keep you and our viewers waiting any longer. Let's jump into game 1 between Wolfe and Markus and see how they are going to go into this losers round 2 match. Well, straight away out here for Markus, we've got that Regirock back on the field, paired up with the Grimmsnarl, and Wolfe is going for the classic combination there of the Colossal and the Dragapult. So pretty much, Lee, those 4 Pokemon that we've talked about, and you've really highlighted the core Pokemon there from Wolfe as well, they're all out on the field at the moment. What do you think is going to go down?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of options here. Wolfe has already revealed, you know, the break and swipe to reduce the attack damage on the opposing Pokemon, which is a nice option. He's also got access to that Will-O-Wisp as well, that the Regirock needs to be aware of. But I'm sure that Markus is well aware of this, and if he does have something like the Tapu Fini he could bring in from the back for that Grimmsnarl, would protect a potential Will-O-Wisp onto that Regirock. So that's something that you've got to keep in mind as well. The Regirock here feeling in a really good position though, you know, I can Dynamax this turn. Grimmsnarl, if it does stay on the field, it can get that screen support up, a light screen to potentially protect against the Colossal and just hit it very hard with a big rock type attack.
Well, you mentioned that Tapu Fini would be a good Pokemon for Markus to have against this potential lead from Wolfe, and I think it's wise that he's been able to switch it straight here onto the field, being able to pressure with both Fairy-type moves into the Dragapult and Water-type moves into that Colossal going into the next turns. But Colossal actually going to get out of that full Wolfe, and he brings in the Urshifu, so a Pokemon that can again apply a lot of good pressure to that opposing Regirock. Although, as you have mentioned, Lee, the defenses on that Regirock are so high, and we saw yesterday actually how much damage an Urshifu did into that Regirock, and it really was underwhelming compared to the sort of the physical output that we know Urshifu tends to have. Markus, however, going to jump straight onto that offensive, going to be Dynamaxing up the Regirock, doubling its HP and making it even bulkier, preparing to take these attacks as Dragapult goes for the Will-O-Wisp, but thankfully Tapu Fini switching in with the Misty Terrain is going to protect Regirock from having its attack stat depleted as he goes for the Max Hailstorm into that Dragapult. Doesn't manage to pick up a KO though, Dragapult able to hang on 21 HP, but of course the Hail will now set as well, and that chip damage and residual damage can come in critical. Just going to start chipping away at Wolfe's team, and Tapu Fini going to take some too, but I think it's got enough HP to survive that, Lee.
Yeah, and just with that leftovers item, just going to get rid of that residual damage from the Hailstorm there. But a really nice play there from Markus, expecting maybe a Will-O-Wisp from the Dragapult, getting the Tapu Fini onto the field, and, putting himself in a really good position here, because the Urshifu coming in most situations would put a lot of pressure onto that Regirock. But with the Tapu Fini sitting on the field, it's a kind of the ideal Pokemon at this point in time. The Dragapult's not really in a position to do very much damage here. It can go for a break and swipe to reduce maybe some attack stat on the Regirock, but it's not affecting the Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini's got a pretty free turn this one, so it's whether or not Markus takes advantage of that, goes for potentially a Calm Mind, and does Wolfe try and get maybe the Rillaboom onto the field?
Well, Rillaboom is going to jump in on the action. Of course, the focus sash that we saw yesterday on Wolfe's Urshifu has been broken by that Hail as well, so it is sitting a little bit more vulnerable to any of those Fairy-type attacks potentially from the Tapu Fini. So Rillaboom going to come in on the action, like you said, reset that terrain so that Will-O-Wisp will be able to connect this time onto that Regirock and now burn it. Tapu Fini is going to go for that Moonblast, but Wolfe bringing in the Rillaboom is going to be able to take that much better than the Urshifu would have. So Rillaboom playing a really pivotal role here, but Markus also just wanted to make sure that even despite the burn, that Dragapult will be removed from the field with a Nulla Max Hailstorm. So manages to get a KO, but I think Wolfe has been able to preserve his Pokemon really well, and getting that Will-O-Wisp onto the Regirock will be critical.
Yeah, and he's doing all the right things to kind of stall out these Dynamax turns, and really utilising there, as we saw the Rillaboom switch in to change the terrain and taking advantage of that to be able to get the Will-O-Wisp that he originally tried to get onto the Regirock, which was blocked by the Misty Terrain that Markus got onto the field. So a really nice play there from Wolfe. He slows down the Regirock, but Markus not in the worst position, but he does need to think about readjusting, because that Rillaboom is going to put a lot of pressure obviously onto both Pokemon here, especially with the grassy terrain setup. The Tapu Fini is very important in this match, as we know it does provide a good outlet of damage against the Colossal and the Urshifu, so it's something that Markus is going to have to really protect. Maybe switch it out here, get the Grimmsnarl in and try and get those screen support up for later on in this match, because he's only got that one turn left with the Regirock in its Dynamax form, so it's trying to get the most out of that now. And he has shown the Max Hailstorm, so he could go for that into the Rillaboom. Burnt, I don't think it's going to pick up enough damage, but it might be enough. But you've got to also worry about the potential Urshifu switch in here for the Rillaboom to get in position for Wolfe for that next turn, where he can Gigantamax the Colossal and then go for that Aqua Jet, proc the Steam Engine, activate that and the Weakness Policy, and then things will get out of hand very quickly.
That's the thing, the Colossal as well is sitting in a really relatively okay position. Even if Wolfe wanted to maybe kind of Dynamax it up, a Muddy Water from that Tapu Fini isn't going to worry it too much, and it would get all the activations, but instead just going to go for that Protect as Rillaboom decides to switch things up, go for that U-turn, getting that little bit of chip damage onto the opposing Regirock as it returns to its Pokeball to allow Wolfe to be able to pivot back in with, like you said, possibly that Urshifu Lee, so that Colossal is now sitting really pretty ready to be activated going into this next turn. Regirock going to go for that Max Knuckle though, going to try and regain some of the attack stat that it's lost from that burn, but as you can see, Urshifu going to be able to take that really well. Of course, the attack stat going to be boosting up both the Grimmsnarl and the Regirock, but Regirock is now going to be out of all of its max turns as well, so it doesn't have the utility of that kind of extra punch to be able to deal extra damage, and I would be very worried if I was Markus right now to see the Colossal and Urshifu standing side by side.
Yeah, that's the problem here, is because you've got really no way to prevent the Aqua Jet now onto the Colossal if it does decide to go for the Gigantamax, and then that's when things get very difficult, especially with the grassy terrain up. We've already seen that the Colossal has access to max overgrowth, and that will hit the Regirock for big damage. So it's whether or not the Grimmsnarl support can be enough, and now I think it's the match is kind of turned on its head a little bit when Wolfe's done his job of stalling out the Dynamax turns from the Regirock. Now it's Markus's turns to try and stall out the Gigantamax turns from this Gigantamax Colossal. It's potentially coming out here. Of course, you can never tell, but that is probably what Wolfe has done. He's really masterfully kind of created a board position that's ideal for him here. Getting the Rillaboom in to force the Tapu Fini out, knowing that, and switching in his Urshifu for free almost here to get that board position and get this kind of ability to have this play right now where he's going to start to really do a lot of damage and start cleaning up Markus's side of the field. So like I say, everything on Markus's kind of side to try and do his best to stall this out without losing too much resource in the process.
I mean, you've said it's now kind of a switch where they have to stall out the opposing turns of Dynamax, but it's much easier to stall out a Pokemon that you've been able to burn that isn't going to be dealing as much damage. But when you're facing down against a Colossal, there's fewer options available to you to kind of negate the damage coming your way. Something like a Light Screen, though, could be helpful, but Aqua Jet's going to come out first of all, connecting onto that Colossal, doing a decent chunk of damage from that Urshifu, but it is worth it when you can get the Steam Engine and the Weakness Policy activation on that Colossal, so it's going to be super speedy and super powerful at this stage. Light Screen is going to come up from the Grimmsnarl. It's Markus's only real option here to kind of negate some of that damage coming forward from the special attacker of Colossal. They're going to go for that G-Max Volcalith. No surprises here, going to be able to connect down onto that Grimmsnarl. Doesn't do enough to pick up the KO thanks to that Light Screen being in place, but critically is going to be able to surround the field with the rocks on Markus's side. Regirock going to go for the Drain Punch though into Urshifu, going to be able to take that easily, but Regirock going to be happy to get a little bit of HP recovery to kind of negate the burn damage that it's receiving as well, but there isn't really a lot that Regirock can do in this situation at the moment. It's just not offensive enough to pick up KOs.
No, not at all, and I think this turn's probably played out as well as what Markus probably hoped for here. He got the Light Screen up, he's still got the Grimmsnarl on the field, so he's still got options of support here if he wants to go forward with. He's got to worry about the Regirock though, because that's probably the target for Wolfe in this next turn. Double down on that. He doesn't have to worry about the Grimmsnarl too much because it will go down to those residual damage from the G-Max Volcalith that will take effect at the end of the turn. It's so low health at the moment, but the Regirock, obviously being a rock type, is immune to that residual damage. It makes it another invaluable member here. So if you are Markus, you maybe got to think, do I protect this turn? Try and switch Grimmsnarl out, preserve that for later, and maybe get something like the Tapu Fini onto the field, change that terrain and kind of take the terrain control back yourself. So that is an option for him, and we still haven't seen that fourth Pokemon that Markus has brought to this battle as well. So it's going to be, has he brought something that's going to be able to come in and maybe help him out a little bit in this really tough situation? Something like the Kartana could come in here and, at least soak up some damage, but you've got to be very careful around those big fire type attacks.
Well, Scary Face is going to come out from the Grimmsnarl, something we haven't seen a lot of, but it's going to lower the speed of that Colossal by 2 stages. But Colossal has got speed boosts to spare at the moment. Going to go for the G-Max Volcalith into the Regirock. Not enough to pick up the KO, but does a sizable chunk of damage. And the Surging Strikes going to be followed up from that Urshifu connecting down into the Regirock. Will solidly be able to pick up the KO. And, I do like this play from Wolfe, like you said, having that kind of coverage in case something was potentially going to switch in. Doesn't have to worry about the Grimmsnarl. It's going to go down to that residual damage. The only concern was potentially if the Grimmsnarl maybe had wanted to go for something like a Spirit Break, lower the special attack of that Colossal. Urshifu might have been able to pick up a KO against it, but Wolfe, knowing that wasn't going to be the option and delving down into that Regirock turned out to be the wiser play, let's say.
Yeah, definitely, and you've got to think there, maybe Markus would have been better off going. I mentioned Protect, and obviously Protect is a bit conflicting here because the Urshifu's ability to break through Protect. So you think, but at least if you protected there, you're taking less damage from the Colossal there, and maybe with the high defense stat that Regirock has, it maybe would have been able to take those Surging Strikes with that time, a little bit less damage from the G-Max Volcalith, but fortunately has gone down. We're going to see Kartana and Tapu Fini hit the field here for Markus, and you kind of, if you are Markus, you probably wanted one more turn to pass and the Colossal not to be in its Gigantamax form any longer, because now Kartana, even if it does have access to protect, it can't really protect on those big fire type attacks that the Colossal can now throw out. So, you know, will do damage, and because of that 4 times the weakness that it has got, it's going to be pretty hard. And with the Rillaboom in the back for Wolfe, all he needs to do is kind of get it onto the field, and the Tapu Fini is under threat very quickly as well.
Yeah, Wolfe just has the type utility here to apply a lot of pressure. Like you mentioned, Lee, those max flares going into the Kartana will not be appreciated in the slightest by the steel and grass type Pokemon. And Pokemon like Rillaboom that's just joined the field here, setting that grassy terrain once again, is going to be able to deal very swiftly with that Tapu Fini. Colossal going to go for that max flare, targeting down straightway into that Kartana. Huge damage, and of course this is going to be setting up the Sun as well. You know, Kartana, there's no focus sash on there. It's going to be going down straight away, and now that leaves Tapu Fini facing down against the Rillaboom and the Colossal. Even with the Muddy Water in the Sun, that's going to be negating some of the damage there, and Colossal in the Dynamax form is going to be able to take that much better. And, you know, the Steam Engine being reactivated, it took those 2 drops from Scary Face earlier on, and Colossal will be very happy to be back at max speed.
Yeah, definitely, and just in a position to kind of really lock this one up for Wolfe. He's done very well and made it very difficult for Markus to get any sort of hold on this match, and getting the Sun up on the field that last turn just really ensures that the Colossal's going to stick around. But as long as Wolfe has the Rillaboom still active on his side of the field, then the Tapu Fini's always going to be under threat. So that's something that Markus really needs to, you know, acknowledge this game to take into game 2, because this game's pretty much over as we speak now. There's a Solar Beam coming out from the Colossal. It's probably going to do enough damage, especially with the grassy terrain support here, and as I say, a Grass Glide on top of that, if not just that, will be enough to deal with the Tapu Fini here. So Markus needs to take this time to reevaluate. I don't think he did too many things wrong. You know, he did that really good turn 1 to block the Will-O-Wisp, and he made easy work of the Dragapult. I think the thing that was difficult there is, if I was Markus in that situation, I'd be a little bit disappointed that I didn't pick up the knockout on the Dragapult, because you remove that, that's at least a step forward, but you're kind of expending 2 turns to take the Dragapult down in that situation, which makes it very difficult then, because it gets another chance at that Will-O-Wisp like we saw the next turn, which really slows down Regirock and stops it becoming as effective if you kind of want it to be.
Exactly. Well, Wolfe going to make an adjustment here. Colossal will be going for that Solar Beam in the Sun, but of course just going to connect down in vain on that Protect of the Tapu Fini. But interesting adjustment as well here from Wolfe. Switched out the Rillaboom and has brought the Urshifu back onto the field here. You know, Rillaboom can just sit in the back if it is even needed to be able to clean up this game here, targeting down super effective damage into that Tapu Fini. But so from Wolfe's side, it does allow the Urshifu and Colossal to keep targeting down and doing damage. And Tapu Fini, sure, it has the leftovers here, but it is essentially a 1v3. Yeah,
it is. And you know, the one thing that I would say is maybe giving Markus a little bit of an edge here is it's giving Markus a little bit more time by switching out the Rillaboom to ensure maybe later on in this match when the grassy terrain ends that you can get it back up again. But, you know, you're giving Markus a little bit more time to think about this next game. It is over now, but you know, that little bit of extra time might just be enough for him to formulate a game plan going into this next one, which is so imperative at this stage of the tournament. You know, jump straight into this game 2 and see how Markus is going to adjust, and also how Wolfe can try and seal this one up.
Yes, exactly. Well, it is going to be a slight adjustment here from Markus. Grimmsnarl still out leading the front here, but there is also the Tapu Fini, and that's the perfect Pokemon choice to try and counteract the Dragapult and Colossal lead out here for Wolfe. You know, having that fairy type attacks on both these Pokemon here with the Spirit Break and Moonblast as well could really try and remove that Dragapult from play. Depending on what Pokemon Markus has in the back, you know, Regirock, Landorus, whichever one it is, it's going to benefit from not having that Will-O-Wisp Pokemon on the field.
Yeah, but one of the problems here, as we saw in game 1, was that Wolfe has that free switch into maybe something like the Rillaboom now next to the Dragapult, get rid of the terrain, and then have access to that Will-O-Wisp again. The Dragapult can't be too careless here, though, because, you know, the Tapu Fini can provide a lot of, you know, damage through Moonblast onto that Pokemon, so the Dragapult has to be a little bit careful, but at the same time, Colossal has the opportunity here as well to go for that max move, or even a Protect here, expecting Markus to go for the Dynamax with the Tapu Fini, take the attack through the Protect, hopefully, or get a Light Screen up through the Dragapult, and then get that Rillaboom onto the field and utilize that grassy terrain even further.
Well, going to be going straight on the offensive here. It is indeed going to be the Gigantamax Colossal. And, you know, again, the Dragapult sitting in a good position here to just go for something like the Surf. It might be sacrificing itself, but getting that early setup on that Colossal can be critical. And this is something we saw Wolfe do yesterday. Had sort of the late Colossal Gigantamax in game 1, and then in game 2 went straight off the bat here, being the powerhouse. And light screen goes up here from both the Dragapult and the Grimmsnarl, actually. So both getting the screen set up, protecting from any special attacks as Tapu Fini goes for that Moonblast, targeting down into the Dragapult. Is it gonna? It is enough to actually pick up the solid KO here with that critical hit. You know, devastating for Wolfe that he loses that Will-O-Wisp setup, but it does now give him the free opportunity to bring in the Urshifu from the back and go for the Aqua Jet on the next turn. But Colossal here going to go for the G-Max Volcalith into Tapu Fini, does about a third of damage, but critically gets those rocks set up nice and early on in this game too.
Yeah, that critical hit there for Markus is huge, because behind the light screen you would expect that the Dragapult to survive that Moonblast. Unfortunately for Wolfe, the critical hit happened, but very fortunate for Markus now, and a really nice turn from there. He's got his screen support up. He's denied, you know, he's not going to worry too much right now about the Colossal with its steam engine, with its weakness policy activated, but the next problem is the Urshifu that comes in for Wolfe, and now there is that similar play that we saw in game 1 where he's going to be able to just go for that Aqua Jet, like you've mentioned, Lewin, and get all of those activations stacked up and put this Colossal in a position where it's getting ready to do some big damage and start picking up those knockouts like we know it can do.
That's the thing, there's nothing that Archons can do to stop this from happening at this stage, and Colossal's then going to be able to deal a lot of big damage potentially to that Grimmsnarl, just remove it from the field before it can start, you know, causing any more disruption, going for any Spirit Breaks and lowering that special attack. And, you know, Colossal also has a way to deal with that Tapu Fini. If the Rillaboom wants to come instead of that grassy terrain and Colossal can go for a max overgrowth, we know that that'll be able to pick up the KO, particularly at this range here of that Tapu Fini. So lots of options here for Wolfe. Markus has to find a way to play around this, try and stall out potentially these last 2 turns as Urshifu goes for the Aqua Jet again, does a solid chunk of damage to the Colossal, but always worth it when you can see these animations activate. Steam Engine boosting the speed stat up to the maximum there for the Colossal, and weakness policy boosting up the special attack by +2, which is what the Colossal needs as it goes for that Max Flare into the Grimmsnarl. Not actually enough to pick up the KO there, but I wonder if the rocks will be able to finish it off at the end of this turn. Setting up the Sun as well is going to negate the damage coming out from that Tapu Fini if it wants to go for something like a Muddy Water, and will boost up any fire type moves going forward. Urshifu able to survive the Moonblast thanks to that light screen that was set up as well. As finally the Spirit Break is going to be the move of choice from that Grimmsnarl. It's actually doubling up into that Urshifu. 2 fairy type moves. Urshifu is not going to be able to survive that light screen or low light screen.
Yeah, I really like this play from Markus. You know, he's in a terrible position if you're looking at the board right now with the activation of that weakness policy in the Steam Engine and the Colossal pretty much set up and ready to start picking up those knockouts like we've said. But the fact that he is just concentrating down on getting knockouts from Wolfe's side of the field and really, you know, narrowing down the options that Wolfe's got is the right way to go about it, you know. Now Wolfe going to be down to his last 2 Pokemon. Markus still got access to his Dynamax Pokemon and still got some healthy Pokemon to come into the field and do some work. He just needs to stall out maybe 1 turn of the Dynamax from this Colossal now, but he does have that light screen support, which is going to be so valuable for him going into this next one.
Well, Markus has made a change, brings that Landorus into the fray. It's going to be able to catch the Rillaboom that's entered the field with an Intimidate as well. So just going to be lowering the attack stat there. Colossal not going to mind, of course. But the critical thing is Rillaboom has now got the Grassy Surge on the field. So those grass type moves from either Rillaboom or the Colossal are going to be dealing a huge chunk of damage to that Tapu Fini. And, you know, Wolfe doesn't have the utility now to switch out that Rillaboom. It is his last 2 remaining Pokemon, but will have to keep that attack drop in play.
Yeah, but if you are Markus, if there's any chance here where you can get rid of the Rillaboom, then it kind of frees up Tapu Fini to maybe come in the late game. If you can switch it out now, just to whatever you've got. If you preserve that Tapu Fini till the late game, till these Dynamax turns are ended on the Colossal, then you can bring it in and maybe utilize it as a Pokemon with and next to that Landorus. That might be enough to kind of close this one up. So target number 1. Can you take down the Rillaboom, and can Landorus here survive a big attack from this Gigantamax Colossal?
Well, calling it perfectly so far, Lee. The Tapu Fini did indeed leave the field, as you suggested, and we see the Regirock come in there as Marcus's fourth and final Pokemon. And the Dynamax Pokemon of choice, however, this time is the Landorus. As you mentioned before we jumped into Game 2, Landorus has so much utility. Things like Max Airstream and Max Quake can really do a lot of damage to both of Wolf's Pokemon here. But instead, just going to go straight on the Max Guard. Wants to make sure that Colossal's last turn of Dynamax doesn't target down into the Landorus. Regirock, however, going to have to take that Grassy Glide. Does do a decent chunk of damage, but of course activates that weakness policy that we saw yesterday as well. So the Regirock, if it is able to survive, and it will do, the Max Flare was going into that Landorus, is going to be able to retaliate with a big chunk of damage going into that next turn, as long as it can hold on taking this attack. And, you know, this is where now the speed tiers really start to come into effect.
Yeah, and actually a really great turn here for Marcus. You know, I said he could go for the attack into the Rillaboom, but the Max Guard there just to stall out the last turn of the Gigantamax from this Colossal is even better, really. It preserves your Landorus for a turn and puts you in a prime spot to now get rid of that Rillaboom, because you can potentially switch out your Regirock here, change the terrain back to the misty terrain, and prevent any Grassy Glide damage that we've seen be so problematic for him in Game 1.
Oh, I love that switch there from Marcus. Like you said, just stopping the Grassy Glide from getting that priority is going to really help Marcus out here in this situation. And, you know, the Misty Terrain comes back onto the field. Colossal going for that Heat Wave. It will still be the speediest thanks to the Steam Engine, but isn't going to be getting any KOs as Max Airstream comes out from that Landorus. It is enough to pick up the solid KO against that Rillaboom, so Marcus doesn't have to worry anymore about the Rillaboom and the offensive pressure that it can deal out. Tapu Fini and Regirock both are going to feel a little bit safer going into the end game of this turn. And, you know, sort of the Colossal here, there's a lot of things that Marcus has access to that's going to be able to pick up KOs against the Colossal.
Yeah, he's got all the Pokemon that he really wants at the end here to help him out and close this game out, you know. Especially with the Landorus Therian now, you're in a position where you can go for that Max Quake and it's guaranteed to pick up a knockout against the Colossal on Wolf's side of the field. You've also got the Tapu Fini as well that really does punish with those water type attacks, even though the sun is up. And then in the back, obviously, you've got the Regirock to come in. And as long as that sun is not in effect, and I'm sure Marcus can do enough to stall out the sun here, if you get it on to the field, then you're not really threatened by those solar beams that need the sun for that one turn move. But without the sun, it's a 2-turn charge, and you can play around that pretty well with something like Protect. So yeah, he's done everything right in this match, and it goes back to what you were saying, Lou, at the very start. Is he going to adjust and bring the Landorus? And we've seen here how well that Pokemon has done and how well he's played it into getting himself into a good winning position in Game 2.
Well, Tapu Fini just going for the Protect here. Marcus maybe having a look at those remaining Sun turns. Landorus, however, almost KO'd there by the Heat Wave, but no, it's going to be able to survive and go for the Max Quake, targeting down into that Colossal, pick up the solid KO, and evening the score for Marcus here. It is one game apiece between Marcus and Wolf. It's going to a Game 3. Exactly. Well, let's jump into Game 3 and see who is going to be the victor between Wolf and Marcus. Who's going to be knocked out of the competition and who's going to be able to continue in Players Cup 2. Tapu Fini and Grimmsnarl are going to be the leads out here for Marcus. You know, that's what he led out in that Game 2 that he was victorious in. But Wolf sticking to what he knows best at this stage is going to be the Dragapult and the Colossal. Once again, not really a lot that Marcus can do to stop the Colossal having all the activations in place. But that Dragapult, if it is able to maybe survive a Moonblast this time, could make for a very different game if things want to play out the same kind of way as Game 2.
Yeah, I think I'm not really surprised by either lead here. I think Wolf probably feels he was a little bit unfortunate in Game 1, losing the Dragapult the way he did, especially with that light screen support up. In most other situations, he would still be sitting on the field with it and being able to utilize it going into turn 2. Now, I think Marcus as well, obviously we saw how well he did in Game 1, that last game, Game 2. Setting the screen support up for the Tapu Fini and then really concentrating down, rather than concentrating on the Colossal, concentrating on the partnering the Pokemon that are so imperative to the strategy, and setting that Colossal up, because it really does rely on its partners to allow it to really be free and start picking up the momentum that we've seen it do so many times throughout this tournament.
Well, speaking of momentum, Wolf is going to try and swing it in his direction by getting that Colossal into its Gigantamax form here in turn 1. it all depends what he's going to go with for that Dragapult. You know, you still have the option to go for that light screen, just protect your Pokemon up that little bit more, or you could go for the Surf Hit and get the activation straight away onto the Colossal. That's exactly what Dragapult has gone for on this occasion. Going to be doing a tiny bit of chip to both of Marcus's Pokemon, but the critical thing here is to get the Steam Engine and the Weakness Policy activated on that Colossal, so it can go for that G-Max Volcalith in turn 1, set up the rocks, but also deal some really big damage to one of the opposing Pokemon. Is going for that G-Max Volcalith, doesn't want to change the weather at this stage, targeting down into that Tapu Fini. Oh, is that a one-hit KO, Lee?
Looks like it has taken the Tapu... has it taken it down? It's very close. Yeah, it's taken the Tapu Fini down. It does go down. That's a huge knockout here for Wolfe, as he is probably in was going for the double up into the Dragapult here, just suspecting maybe the same turn play out as in game 2 there, where the light screen was set up and he thought, well, this is an opportunity where I can potentially take down the Dragapult. I don't feel like the Colossal's going to get set up, and Wolfe reading right into that and removing probably one of the biggest threats to him right now, and something that Marcus really would have liked to have been able to take advantage of.
Yeah, I think vengeance has been served for that critical hit of Game 2. Dragapult able to survive as well. As you mentioned earlier, Lee, you know, Grimmsnarl not known as the most offensive of Pokemon. It does have access to that Spirit Break, but it's not always trained to be able to deal as much damage with that particular move. So Dragapult able to survive much more than it would have if it was something like a Moonblast from that Tapu Fini.
Yeah, and now the Dragapult in a little bit of an awkward position, because normally you'd want to be able to Will-O-Wisp that Regirock like we saw in Game 1, but to do that you're going to have to sacrifice your Gigantamax Colossal that's just set up, so that makes no sense. So you're not really got access to that Will-O-Wisp right now, especially with the Misty Terrain active on the field. The Regirock's in a great position, and you don't want to hit it with any super effective moves, so you got to be very careful, but Wolfe does have the play where he could potentially switch it in the Rillaboom and then go for that G-Max Overgrowth into the Regirock, and it might be enough on the boosted special attack that it's got to pick up the knockout, especially if we don't see a Dynamax here.
Well, Wolfe has done the first part of your prediction there, switching in the Rillaboom and bringing the Grassy Terrain to the field, and no Dynamax either. The light screen, however, is going to go up from that Grimmsnarl, just protecting from any special type moves. As Colossal goes for the G-Max Volcalith, however, so not making use of the Grassy Terrain here, just wants to try and pick up the Solid KO against that Grimmsnarl and remove it from the field so it cannot go for any more screens in the future. The Regirock able to move though, and going for a Curse, not something we have seen as of yet here, Lee.
No, not at all, and that will boost its attack and its defense stat, but it will lower its speed by one stage, but making it a lot more of a difficult Pokemon to deal with, and especially after Grimmsnarl has just got that light screen support, making it able to take those special attack moves a little bit better, but facing down against two potential grass threats is a little bit daunting to say the least, but he is able to get the Landorus onto the field now, get an Intimidate off onto the Rillaboom, which is useful, and he does have the option now to go for either Pokemon, the Regirock or the Landorus, as the max Pokemon here, so both giving good options against what's in front of him. So the match not over, but Wolfe doing all the right things early on, and he's whittled Marcus down to his last two Pokemon here, but still got the Dynamax in the bag, so still a lot that can happen in these next few turns.
Yeah, it does still give Marcus the flexibility to, like you said, lead Dynamax either the Regirock or the Landorus. With the Regirock having that attack and defense boost as well, that could be really helpful. You know, having your HP doubled as well, it's going to give you a lot of longevity and pressure out there on the field. But Landorus having sort of the utility options that it has with something like a Max Airstream could be really helpful against that Rillaboom. But, you know, we've also seen that Regirock have sort of access to the Max Hellstorm as well. That's something that the Rillaboom doesn't want to take, particularly at a +1 on that Regirock. And Marcus is deciding this is the opportunity to go for that Dynamax, but instead it is going to be the Landorus, maybe wanting to go for something like the Max Airstream. That would of course negate the speed drop as well that the Regirock has taken due to that curse and put it right back up down to neutral. Colossal is going to go for the G-Max Volcalith, however, so still not utilising any of these overgrowths, does not want to accidentally activate that weakness policy on the opposing Regirock. Landorus is going to be able to take that and goes for the Max Airstream into the Rillaboom and picks up the solid KO against it. We saw in the previous game how much damage that can deal, and it is still not disappointing here in Game 3. The speed will be increased on both these Pokemon as well. Landorus now at +1 and the Regirock at neutral.
Yeah, and that +1's really critical here for Marcus, because it puts him in a great position going into this next turn. If that Dragapult comes out onto the field, it's going to be able to get rid of it before it starts throwing out those Will-O-Wisps. It could be so threatening to both these physical attackers here, and we've just seen how powerful the Regirock's attack is onto the Colossal. But as you know, that Wolfe's normal selection here that he's brought to every game previously in this set is that Urshifu. Now, Has he got enough to be able to handle both the setup Colossal and the Urshifu? Now the Colossal has come to the end of its Gigantamax turn, so it's going to be a lot easier to deal with. And with that speed boost from the Landorus, I still think Markus is really in with a shot at winning this one.
Yeah, exactly. Urshifu here being a really good Pokemon. And I think the other good thing as well is that Colossal didn't set up the Sun either during any of its Gigantamax turns. So the Water-type moves coming out from that Urshifu will still be at sort of normal dealing power. It's not going to have to work against the Sunshine. And that's something that's going to be very threatening for both of Markus's Pokemon, like you mentioned, Lee.
Yeah, and you know, the Colossal now is in a little bit of an awkward spot where it can fire off a Heat Wave. It can probably do a decent amount to Landorus, but we saw from the previous game, it's probably not in range to pick up the knockout here from the Heat Wave, and hasn't got the Sun supporting it now like it previously had. So Landorus is probably in a good position to go for big damage onto either here, remove the Colossal from the field, and then allow Regirock just to get some damage off onto the Urshifu, or go for the max airstream again into the Urshifu and try and double up with a Rock Slide here to chip potentially a Sash or whatever we're seeing there from the Urshifu.
Oh, well, a couple of protects here. The Max Guard going to stop the Surging Strikes from dealing any damage to the Landorus, and the Colossal able to protect itself as well from that Rock Slide. Urshifu, however, not going to be able to dodge out the way. It will connect and critically break that Focus Sash with a critical hit, no less, as well. Of course, Markus here going for that Max Guard, just preventing that Urshifu from dealing any of that big water-type damage to it. But those max turns will be ticking away now. Markus has to find a way to be able to pick up a KO against that Urshifu before it's able to pick up a KO with those water-type moves.
Yeah, now the danger is with the residual damage from the G-Max Volcalith onto the Landorus now, it's probably in range for an Aqua Jet from the Urshifu, and then the double up with a Heat Wave from the G-Max, well, the Colossal now, it's not G-Max, and that makes it very awkward to get any kind of damage off there, and that takes you down to Regirock, and then everything's kind of relying on it from there. So whether or not, if you are Markus, you identify this and then you put all your resources from the Regirock into taking down that Urshifu this turn, because it's got to concentrate all its efforts onto that Landorus. If it doesn't, then there is the chance that it can survive and get a big attack off.
Oh, well, Aqua Jet does connect, but it doesn't manage to pick up the KO. Colossal is, however, able to connect that Heat Wave, which will do the last remaining damage on that Landorus, while also getting a burn on that Regirock. Poor Regirock getting burned left, right, and centre in this set between Markus and Wolfe. But, I mean, you can see now why Markus really did go for that Max Guard in the previous turn. That kind of combination would have been enough to pick up the KO at the HP it was at. Rock Slide going to connect back down onto that Regirock. Not going to be able to pick up any KOs, however. And, you know, just unfortunate there for Markus that the Colossal on Wolfe's side was protecting on that Max Guard turn, because Regirock, if it was able to connect that Rock Slide, would have been able to pick up the KO against it. The Heat Wave then wouldn't have gone off here and connected onto the opposing Landorus. So just unfortunate there for Markus getting that burn as well.
Yeah, really unfortunate. The burn here has really hindered any ability to pick up the knockouts that he needs, you know. And without the burn there, you take down the Colossal, and then you're just looking at the Urshifu Dragapult. You still have to contend with Will-O-Wisp when it comes back onto the field, so you're looking probably like you're going to get burned regardless. But, you know, like I said, if you kind of concentrate down more on the Urshifu on that last turn, I think that would have been maybe the way to go. You're revealing the Drain Punch. But obviously you cannot predict this game and the burn coming out. There is always a chance when you're firing off these fire type attacks, but it's kind of really just sealed this one up, and all Wolfe needs to do now is just get himself into a position where he can get decent consistent damage off onto this Regirock, because it's still got a curse up under its belt, but the critical hits are going to ignore that from the Surgeon Strike, and maybe between that and another Heat Wave it's going to be enough to deal with it.
Exactly, Wolfe kind of has all the utility he needs at this stage. The Surging Strikes from that Urshifu, but also you can see the switch coming in here. You can have Urshifu in the back for later to deal with the water-type moves if needed, but Dragapult here going to come out onto the field as Colossal goes for the Heat Wave. Targeting down into it does a decent amount of damage. Of course, it's not very effective here, and you know, it can't get the burn. It's already got the burn, but the Drain Punch there going into the Dragapult, a really nice switch there from Wolfe, just preserving that Urshifu in the back, as it is the Pokemon that is certainly going to be needed to wrap this game up.
Yeah, and really punishing that player there, you know. It's very difficult when you're trying to restore your health through a move like Drain Punch and make sure that you've got that longevity sticking around in the field. But when there's a Ghost type in the back, like we've just seen, and Wolfe bring that in, it gives you the free switch in, and now he's got access to that Breaking Swipe that we've seen on the Dragapult, which is going to just, you know, even further decrease the attack stat of Regirock and make it really even more ineffective. And you can see the damage that the Colossal's doing at the minute with these Heat Waves. It is quite sizable, and the light screen is going to wear off very soon, so it will start to stack up a little bit more here.
Yeah, and Dragapult going to reduce that attack stat even further, going for the breaking swipe here. Of course, actually, no, wait, the clear body, of course, on the Regirock going to stop any of those drops from coming into effect. Regirock going to be going for the Rock Slide. Does manage to pick up the KO against that Colossal, though, so Markus will be delighted to see it removed from the field if it is the small bit of victory he can get from this game.
Yeah, very well pointed out, Lou, and reminded me about the clear body ability on the Regirock there, negating any of those breaking swipe drops. But at this point, I feel like, you know, there's not really much hope for it with the Urshifu coming back onto the field. It does have access to Surgeon Strikes, and it probably will be enough just by itself to pick up the knockout onto this Regirock and seal the victory for Wolfe in what has been an incredibly intense game for our viewers to kick off with today.
Yeah, there's been a lot of momentum changes through all three of these games. Urshifu going to be able to land the final blow, though, with one of the potential 3 Surging Strikes there, pick up the KO against the Regirock, and seal the set up for Wolfe, who will be continuing in Players' Cup 2.